Todd Herring has been the head coach of Eastview High School in the suburbs of Minneapolis since it first opened in 1997. Is that right?
That's right.
24 years ago. Eastview High is currently the third strongest in the nation, according to the NSDA. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'd like to first ask about this ranking because I'm honestly curious. How is this determined, the third strongest team in the nation?
Yeah, the NSDA has a calculation based on what they call members and degrees. So it's essentially the number of students on your team and then the NSDA degrees that they earn. So it's largely a measure of size of program and then to some degree the success of the students, right? Because the more successful they are, the easier it is for them to earn degrees. But I think the biggest thing is it's just a measurement of program size and participation.
But there's also some multiplication factors. So if you had a team of two and they're both national champions, it still might not be enough to get a high ranking.
That's exactly right. It's far more about the size of the program overall.
Very, very interesting. So you've been coaching for a long time. You just told me 30 years.
Yeah.
Can you briefly, or maybe not so briefly, describe your journey as a debate coach? And specifically, I'm wondering, I imagine you're a bit better at coaching than you were 20 years ago. And your reflections on how you've changed throughout your career.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd like to think that I'm better. I loved debate as a high school debater, loved it, and was looking for a way to stay active. I was not interested in debating in college, but coaching was a way to stay involved in the activity. And I think when you're a young coach and you're coming right out of competing, it's sort of an extension of that process. You look at it in terms of cutting evidence and preparing arguments. And then as you mature as a teacher and coach, you probably get better at thinking about the people involved and thinking about the development of the people. And your goal, still it's fun to win and do well, but your goal becomes more about helping young people advance in their lives, and a little less about the argument you're going to run in a particular round, and you become more well-rounded, and certainly you probably become more sensitive to just a variety of issues that the debaters have. 30 years, we didn't really talk about mental health. We didn't talk about the lives of the students in the way that we do now, more awareness of the holistic part of coaching.
So in other words, like treating students as people, treating your coaches as people, rather than aiming solely at the win. Just out of curiosity, because I have heard this from other coaches, does that also involve having you and your coaches do less prep work for the students?
Yeah, that's always a dilemma of how, to what degree should the coach be involved in the preparation. I find myself to be pretty moderate in that. I'm not someone who says never should the coach, offer a suggestion on an argument or a piece of evidence. I also don't think the coach should just do the prep. So finding that balance where it's a partnership and really making the students develop those skills, but then supplementing that with experience and suggestions is the middle ground that I've found there.
Yeah, you're right. It is a balance. And I guess it also depends on the team, the students, and probably the coach and the program to a large degree. Talking about winning, you do lead a very winning program, but how important is that factor for students' experience with debate? I have this intuition, and I could be wrong about it, but it is an intuition that there are some students, and especially very poor debaters, that can't get a lot out of the experience. Do you find this to be true?
That can or cannot?
That cannot. And in other words, there seems to be some middle ground where you have an aptitude for learning the skill, right? And then you spend time in it. And even if you're not initially good, you can add your skills a lot. But some students will never be good at basketball, and some students will never be good at crocheting. Some people will never be good at debate. And so I'm wondering if you share that intuition that some students can't benefit as much, or if winning matters that much.
I'm going to take that a little bit differently, and I'm going to say that I think we overestimate the relationship between winning and benefit. And I'm going to take somebody who joins debate and is rarely competitively successful. Let's say they win 10% of their rounds, and half of those are buys, right? We have those kids, and every program has people that just struggle. But that part of being on a team, preparing for something that's really rigorous, standing up and delivering an argument, knowing somebody is going to tear it down, getting back up to give a rebuttal, getting that feedback. I think that there's a lot of growth that can happen in that process. Not necessarily, you're right, the skill development might not be where we'd like it to be, but just the self-confidence and the team membership can be really beneficial. Now, of course, if you are more into debate and you read more articles and you prepare more and you love it, the benefits increase from that point on. But I think there is value in participation.
And I think the range of skills is also broad enough that even if you were to get some marginal benefit on, like you say, participation, which is fun, hanging out with your friends, which is fun, learning to graciously accept feedback, which is hard, but everyone has to deal with that in their life, learning how to speak and communicate, which once again, everyone's got to deal with in their life. Even those marginal benefits at different levels could be very helpful.
I think so.
I'm going to destroy the formality of this wonderful, wonderful interview so far by going to turn on my AC. Will you give me just a moment?
No problem.
All right. Good answer. Very good answer. What are some of the biggest factors? And I'm asking some of these questions just because I understand you have had such a long career, and I'm really just kind of exploring if you have some answers that other people haven't given me. What are some of the biggest factors that you've seen that set winning teams apart? Is coaching a large part of it, or are there other parts to it? I mean, you also you're not just a coach, but you run a rather large program, right? And I imagine you have quite a few coaches working for you.
Right.
And so maybe you've seen how they can work with different people. Is the organization of the program or the coach themselves, or how do you see this interaction of factors that lead to success with teams?
Yeah, the first word that comes to mind is culture, a team culture that both encourages participation and encourages excellence, right? Most good programs in our activity have tradition. And you'll just see those younger debaters or speakers look up to people in the program who are successful. Okay, that's how it's done. I understand what it means to be committed. I understand what it means to prepare. And so much of it is culture, but also just an inviting atmosphere. It's a numbers game, I think, to a large degree, where it's very difficult to know when an incoming ninth grader comes into the program, who they'll be in 3 or 4 years. And one of the things I've learned in my career is my initial judgments of debaters are often wrong. It's the quiet kid who really isn't participating, who's listening to everything, who turns out to be a star 3 years down the road. And it's the kid that has their hand in the air and has an answer for everything that seems awesome as a ninth grader. And then maybe things don't quite pan out. And so numbers get people who want to be part of the program and who see this example that the older kids have provided. And that often leads them to sustainable success in a program.
Because that kind of peer leadership, especially like across the 4 grades of high school, is, I guess, a big part of what builds the culture, right? I guess there's a crucial role, but a limited amount that a single coach can do in creating that culture.
Yeah, probably the most important work in creating a program is those early years of establishing the culture, establishing the expectations, and that's really related to coaching. There's no doubt about it, right? A coach that jumps in and oftentimes debate isn't supported in a school the way, an athletic program might be, and you have to really work to kind of carve out your niche and earn that support within the school community. And there's a lot of coaching that goes into that. But once you're successful, often I think that it's a little easier to maintain that because of the example that those students set. And they don't know where those expectations came from. They don't see back 15 years ago. They just know that those are the expectations.
Interesting. So kind of seeding values early in a program and then having those values sort of self-propagate, like as new students join the program and just look up to their older peers.
I think that's exactly how it works. Yeah.
Insightful. Really. I've never started a debate program, but this is very insightful. One final question on coaching specifically, and this is certainly my most selfish question. Coaching debate at a high level is more difficult than let's say teaching beginners, right? A skill, just because I mean, there's so much more ground you have, whereas with more advanced students, the gains are smaller and therefore maybe harder to access, right? What are some approaches that you take with the best teams? And is there any sort of general advice that you'd give to a new coach to help them with these more advanced students?
Yeah, and you're right. That's the final leap from, say, a solid varsity team that wins half their debates to a varsity team that can really do something. And those are tough final steps to take. And I'll say it depends a little bit on who you're working with and what their strengths are. But topic knowledge, I think, is a little bit underrated, maybe, in terms of at some point really understanding the literature and understanding the topic is just essential. And you can, no matter how good you are at preparing, things occur in debates that you can't prepare for. And the very best debaters are the ones who can kind of go, okay, I see what's happening here. Here's an answer. So really working on the depth of topic understanding. I think, a lot of it is it's not, how do I put this? There's not a mystery to it. It's, you have a sense of the arguments that are coming your way. You have a sense of what you're going to need to do to be successful, but it's practicing the execution. And it's, what I find is that debaters, they love to sit around and talk about arguments. They love to sit around and talk about answers, but they don't love as much to stand up and deliver those arguments and practice those answers and do drills. And I think it's practicing the execution that needs to happen in a round is essential. And that's what I've found is my very best debaters are the ones who, they learn the topic really well, right? They write good cases, but then they want to keep redoing those rebuttals and redoing the execution of the technical skills in the debate that they need. And, guiding them in that and giving feedback from a coach that can help them get better is pretty important.
I would say your second answer is a little bit more what I expected, like really drilling technical skills. The first answer is more intuitive, but actually a little bit more surprising. Just like know the topic really well. Like that's going to help. Which, in hindsight, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that here's a personal opinion of mine. I think there's a lot of debaters that think that technical skills are really the only thing that matters. And so they're looking for really unique arguments. And then they think, well, if I have really good technical skills and I have unique arguments, people aren't going to be able to answer this and I'm going to win, which can be largely true. But at some point you go up against another team that also has those skills. And then the better argument has the better chance of winning. And I think people, better arguments come from strong literature bases, and the truer the argument, the easier it is to defend. So having something that really you can stand behind and say, no, this isn't gimmicks, this isn't smoke and mirrors, this is really what the literature says in a really strong round, I think puts you in a much better position. I don't know that I see that always appreciated by some good debate teams.
Yeah, and as you put it, underappreciated. Not that people don't know that you have to learn about the topic, but underappreciated in importance. And it is, I think, even for let's say a lay judge or participant, those can be some moments in rounds that really feel decisive, right? When there's two teams, one who clearly knows on a certain argument or point their background knowledge better, and they're just a wall that the other team can't get past, and you see them maybe floundering a little bit, and it's sort of obvious in a non-technical way. It's not dealing with really technical things, but just the confidence that you can bring to the table and how obvious that is, that like this person knows what they're talking about, this person does not know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I really like your use of the word confidence, because that's exactly what it produces. And I see that most in cross-examination or crossfire, where some people want questions. Like, ask me anything about my arguments. I want you to ask because I'm looking for a chance to answer. And other people really don't want to be asked because it's smoke and mirrors, and they want to get out of that discussion as fast as they can. And you sense that, right? As a judge, even like you say, a lay judge, you sense who's confident in their position, who believes in it, and who is really trying to get away with something.
In terms of that, what I've always perhaps not always, but maybe in recent years, I've started to think about the different positions on different sides, and how students can embody those positions. In other words, how you can sort of like method act or temporarily believe those positions, right? Even though they're perhaps opposite things, it's sort of like in the moment you have to be totally convinced that obviously I'm right, like obviously. Yeah. Do you kind of see that framing the same way about having students like truly believe some position, or does that sort of naturally arise just out of the full knowledge of the topic?
I believe that you can really believe what you're saying on two sides of a topic. And that the reason these are debate topics is because there are good ideas on both sides. These are not determined issues, right? Otherwise, that would be a terrible debate. Right, so I think you can find truth on both sides of an issue. Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can have your personal view of which side you think is right, but you can still find truth on both. And so if you're making arguments that you believe to be true on your side, you can have that real conviction behind you. And yeah, I think you're right. I think that's possible. And I think it's desirable.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, I think early on when I was exposed to debate, I did find that to be a problem, right? Sort of if you're viewing the world a little bit more black and white, you feel like, okay, there's this issue of gun control or whatever, and there must be a right answer, right? All of these people believe these things and these things and these things, but where is the correct answer to this problem, right? And I guess debate helps to expose the lie that is black and white thinking.
It's one of the great things about debate, right? I just think that it makes people a lot more intellectually honest, a lot more sort of zealous in their beliefs, because they start to go, well, I think this is right, but I appreciate that there's this body of literature and way of thinking over here that has some validity to it, because I had to make those arguments myself. And yeah, I love that about debate.
Yeah, more intellectually honest, even if it's difficult. I mean, even if that sort of ambiguity can be truly intellectually challenging, right? It is more honest.
Right.
Let's talk about events. What events does your team focus on mostly? Is it speech as well as debate?
Yeah. So in Minnesota, our structure is a little bit different in that we have distinct debate and speech seasons. So debate is in the fall and winter. We start when school starts in September. We debate through January, and then speech season is really like January into April.
Is that unique in Minnesota, or do other states have this?
I think there are a lot of states where they do both kind of year round, and students will then, you would debate or you would do IEs or individual events. Whereas in Minnesota, a whole lot of students will do both. They'll debate, and then they'll be done with debate for the year, and they'll switch over and do speech. So one of the things that I think makes our program unique is that we are really oriented toward the local circuit. The vast majority of our participation is local. It's in-state. It's with fellow Minnesota schools. And, we travel a little bit. It's what's different now in the pandemic because it's so easy to participate in online tournaments because there's no travel cost. But we would travel a little bit and valued that. But really, it was about competing here locally. And we're blessed with a really vibrant competitive environment. Some really strong schools in our area that we can compete against and help us to get better. But it's really oriented locally, and that's a program philosophy in the sense that we want lots of participation. And there's only so many kids who can afford to travel. It's only, even if you had 100 kids that wanted to travel, logistically that would be impossible to find those judges and make those accommodations. So in our view, traveling is exclusive, and we want to be inclusive as much as we can. So it's a lot of local tournaments.
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like nationally, the debate world is coming to understand it's been forced to understand the inclusivity that's kind of inherent in online tournaments, right? But I don't think that was necessarily an intentional thing, right? It's not that people have been haven't been acknowledging the fact that debate is sort of like an elite sport for a long time, like limited to the upper classes. But there hasn't really been anything to force us in this direction before now. And I think almost everyone acknowledges that as a really nice change, right? Which is not to rule out travel or say you can't go to other places, but just that option, and not just sort of like to invite people into the fold or to make it more accessible, but literally to improve the quality of the debate. Like because you have more competitors, you're going to have like a higher quality. It's going to be more competitive. I feel like it's better for everyone that way. Like debate, really, the future of debate, I really feel like is online. Have you heard of this app, by the way, called Clubhouse?
No.
This is kind of like the newest cool social media app. I'm not sure how much it'll catch on. It's been around for a couple of years and probably really taken off the last 4 months or so, I think, since Elon Musk had an interview. But it's totally voice-based. It's an entire social media app that's nothing but your voice. Very, very little room for one simple profile picture, a little bit of text, and everything else is just revolving around talking, just voice. All live. There's no recording. It's not like a podcast. It's very, very, very interesting. And if there's anyone out there who has Clubhouse, add me. We'll see if we can make debate happen on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting to see where we go with this forced, dive into online debate and to what degree that stays. And I think everybody's having those discussions right now. But in terms of equity, in terms of inclusion, it's fantastic.
Mm. But I also appreciate that you're saying in Minnesota, this is not a recent thing. Like the fact that you stick local is sort of in the Minnesota culture.
Yeah, I just don't know any other way to have mass participation. Well, pre-online, right?
Yeah.
And that's just been so important to our program. And it goes back to that discussion we were having at the beginning is, what are you really about? And if you care about the 75th kid on the roster and their experience, which I think is good to do that, then thinking about, well, what does their season look like? Because it's not traveling to Harvard. It's going, 10 miles down the road and on a Saturday go competing. And, what does that feel like? And if that feels good and they're enjoying that and they're telling their friends, debate grows. And we want debate to grow.
Out of curiosity, is the debate scene essentially Minneapolis, or is it much more statewide?
Yeah, it's largely Twin Cities and in the surrounding suburbs. We do have, we call them outstate programs, in broader Minnesota, but it's a handful. They've really struggled to sustain their programs outside of the Twin Cities. So
well, that helps having a concentration in a smaller geographic area. That's got to really be where the magic is.
Well, and it certainly it helps those of us who are in the metro area, but we feel badly about people who are, have to travel every weekend, 3 hours to come to tournaments, when we're traveling 20 minutes. So there's concerns about that, but they're hard to address those concerns.
Yeah, and if you live in a small city, in a rural area, that's debate is one of many sacrifices you have to make. One of many inconveniences. But it is a good thing to acknowledge at the same time, right? And to understand to help them participate. I'm in Taiwan, which is I don't know how big it is compared to Minnesota. I imagine similar, maybe a little bit smaller, but same thing. We give like financial incentives to people who come from the other side of the island versus a local, and it is good to keep it in mind, of course.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more questions. I want to talk about sort of the future of debate, perhaps, or what is your vision with such a long career? I think you probably have some sort of like big history view of debate that maybe some people don't, at least several decades long, right? So in terms of new styles, right? I mean, essentially, debate was policy debate for quite a long time, and new styles have sprung out of, let's say, the community or certain coaches' feelings that something is missing or something needs to be added, or there's some skill that could be adjusted. Do you feel that existing styles adequately cover the range of needs, or is there a kind of Herring debate that you'd like to make that would change something?
Well, okay. So really, the reason that new styles keep popping up is because the existing styles, the I don't know what the right phrase is. We always call it sort of the circuit style of going faster and being more technical comes in, and then Lincoln Douglas comes around because people say, well, we want to get back to something more pure, something that we're going to call it values debate, and it's going to be different. And then next thing you know, LD sounds kind of like policy, and here comes public forum, and this is going to be the debate for everybody. It's accessible, and it's lay judges are going to be able to do it. And then of course, here comes the speed, and here comes the jargon and the technical aspects. I think the desire to have a debate that is accessible and intuitive is absolutely essential to the growth of our activity. And when you look at what happened in public forum, when it was easy to get into, when it was like, yeah, join up here, a speech, anybody can do this. You got a speech team, great, add public forum. You got a teacher who wants to do this, it's easy, jump in. And people are finding that success, numbers exploded, it became the largest debate event. Well, now as public forum progresses, matures, changes, whatever, and it's a little bit difficult to jump in because people have developed, more technical skills. I really worry that limits growth. And so I would just love for there to be one event that's just traditional, like public speaking oriented debate, where it's exactly what someone who never did debate would think it would look like, right? People kind of talking at a reasonable pace, and they're researching arguments, and they're not feeling compelled to attend month-long summer camps, and they don't need to have access to elite level coaching to be successful. I would love for there to be one event, don't care what it is, that looked like that.
Do you
I think
feel
that's where you
that
get growth.
Do you feel that World Schools addresses that at all?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm sort of vaguely familiar with World Schools. It really hasn't caught on in Minnesota. It sure seems like that's what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it does. I think the changing of topics is cool. I think it seems like there's really a lot of emphasis on just being a well-rounded, person who knows a lot about a lot of public policy issues. I think there's a lot of
kind of impromptu, sort of impromptu debate, like limited prep, right? And so that maybe makes some of the prep more difficult, right? I mean, obviously you can still rehearse and practice with a lot of novel topics, but it does also take away the aspect of prep, right? Of like deeply learning a topic, because if you have 30 minutes, you can't get too deep in a topic.
Yeah, I wonder how accessible that is for novices. It seems like a more intimidating format to jump into, in that, it's hard enough for kids when they have a topic to feel like
Mhm.
they're ready to go and show up. I wonder when, with the changing nature of topics and impromptu rounds, and if that becomes a kind of an entry barrier then, because that's just a harder thing to jump into.
Yeah, it definitely could. I also don't have that much experience with world schools, but I kind
Yeah,
of, yeah.
same here.
I've coached a couple teams, but not a ton. And the teams I have coached were already quite competent students, right? And I imagine if you were shy or if you weren't that good at speaking, it could be quite intimidating, really
I,
scary.
I would think so. And I think you're right. I think the path to kind of get started in some other format and get your fundamentals down and then jump into world schools makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure starting a team with world schools, but I could be totally wrong. Maybe
Hmm.
the people in that world be like, no, no, it works great. Kids are a lot less intimidated because they feel like there's not this deficit of preparation.
Yeah, a lot of the people that I've met here in Asia that are into it because of the language barrier, essentially, right? That if you're competing in your second or third language, it's I mean it's you just automatically have a huge disadvantage. It doesn't matter how academic or intelligent you are, right? Like if you're just the English doesn't come to you as well. So world schools seems to some of them more fair because maybe like in a lot of international tournaments, everyone's competing in their second language. Yeah, so that's one way maybe to draw on people even from the non-English speaking world or not primarily English speaking world. um Next question, even a little bit more broad, is there anything that you would like to change about the speech and debate community? And in terms of the future, are there any hopes that you have for the future of speech and debate, or any fears that you have about something that could go amiss?
Well, I've really talked about my one real hope, which is more inclusivity, more you know, paths to entry for teams that don't have access to elite level resources. And I guess the fear is that debate more and more becomes sort of dominated by these national elite programs, and other people say, well, we'll do something else. We'll do quiz bowl. We'll do mock trial. We'll do, we've got these other things. They're a little easier. And I think that would be a real shame because I just think debate is uniquely powerful as an educational activity. It's the best thing I've been around as an educator in my career. And I want kids to debate. I don't want them to just do some other activity. Nothing wrong with those activities. I just think there's something special about debate in the rigor. So the hope is that we continue to push for inclusion and creating pathways for people to join our activity. And the fear is that we won't, because a lot of the people that sort of rise in power are from the perspective of the national tournaments and the national, the traveling, and that's their upbringing in the activity. So that's what they value. I think there's a lot of kind of local knowledge out there that we should be embracing.
Do you have any intuitions about how we might make it more inclusive?
Well, I think it starts with a product, a format that is truly inclusive, that isn't highly technical, that isn't jargony, that people can intuitively grasp. And then it's support for people getting involved, right? It's the NSDA has done a really good job, I think, with what resources can we provide, what videos, what support, and creating opportunities then. And I'm not exactly sure, around the country, but I know that if you have a local circuit and you can reach out and create mentorship programs for new coaches, and you can create partnerships where new schools work with established schools, and there's maybe some sharing of coaching and evidence, and bringing people into the fold, it is a successful model. That's work to create new programs, but it starts with the product. It has to be something that people
Hmm.
feel they can do. The best programs have sustained coaches, right? People that are willing to stick with it. And the more expertise that is required to be a debate coach, the harder it is to find those people. Right there's a million people that can coach basketball because they played basketball. There just aren't as many people that can do debate at a high level. So if you don't make it accessible, you limit out your coaching, you limit out your growth.
Yeah. I have a feeling that debate maybe still has its golden age in the future. I don't know if this will turn out to be true, but it's some kind of a feeling I have in my gut.
I sure hope so. I really, my whole career, it shows me that when people are exposed to debate, they like it. Parents, students, teachers, administrators, when they see what it really is and what it can do, they like, this is important, this is valuable. And we just have to create opportunities for people to see it because it sells itself, right? The benefits are so powerful.
Yeah, you're totally right. So this is only the second uh interview I've done as part of this new podcast series. I suppose we'll see where it goes. But last week I talked to Mark Niles from Houston, their Urban Debate League, and he was talking about some research in debate, which I actually wasn't aware of. And because it's only been a week, there's still I need to even start, but I would like to really do a comprehensive a literature review of the debate, of the research in debate, because I wonder. I think there's people. I mean, you're saying, for example, maybe mock trial doesn't have quite the academic oomph that debate does, but I wonder if there's someone doing a mock trial interview right now saying, oh, I've seen mock trial, it changes lives, right? People just need to get exposed to it. And I wonder, I hear nothing else from debaters, from debate coaches, from debate and the people in the debate community, but I wonder how much of it is real and how much we can prove now, or how much research there's to be done in the future, because I mean, cults say the same thing. So like I'm just somewhat like apprehensive, like it seems like it changes lives, it seems like it really does, and this is what everyone says, but I'm wondering if we can prove this somehow.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the healthy skepticism, but who designs a study be like, all right, we're going to put half of you in mock trial and half of you in debate, and 10 years from now we'll figure out who got more out of it. And like, I really think that if you did that, you would find out that the rigors of debate do provide a broader range of benefits for the participants. But I don't know that there really is a research base to show that, because
if I find anything good, I will send it to you.
Experimenting with children or something.
Yeah, that is frowned upon generally. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. That's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the community, or any other thoughts you have on your mind about debate?
No, Joel, I just appreciate that you're interested in having conversations about debate and sharing ideas. I think that's fantastic. I've enjoyed talking with you today, and I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, beautiful. I'll send this interview to you in a little bit. Probably it'll be out next week. And if I find anything interesting in my literature review, I'll certainly send it your way.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Todd.
All right,